It works. Okay. Hi, everyone. I am Matilde Cassani. Thank you very much for the introduction. And today I will talk about my work and where my work comes from or brings ideas from. The title is already quite telling, I feel. People as architecture. We look at architectural photographs having no people around. And the aim of my work is to try to re-include people into the photograph. And in fact, you will see all the works presented today, which comes from very different disciplines, have this characteristic. Most of the works deal with this idea of celebration days. With celebration days, I mean every ceremonial occasions we could have in life, from happy to sad moments, so from funerals to actually parties. Just citing a few photographs that to me are really telling about this concept of people as architecture. This is a celebration of the World Cup in Buenos Aires, Argentina, where you see the mass is actually covering entirely this square, and the obelisk is there, but it's probably less relevant or less important than the volume of people being there. Same way, this is the funeral of the Pope, of the recent Francesco's death, and you see St. Peter's is filled with the diverse array of people participating into the funeral, and the geometries are just given by the people's positions. And this became very famous very recently, and this is a photograph of the bridge filled with people for the Pride here in Budapest. And to me here you see how the bridge is, again, the architecture made by the people. Let's go now deeply into my work, the very beginning of it, where I started studying rituals in the middle of the Italian flatlands where Parmesan cheese is produced. And here you have a very large community of Sikhs coming from Punjab that moved here supposedly to work for the production of Parmesan cheese. They are all doing the same job. They are milkers in the production. This is the beginning of the festival they do every year, the Vaisakhi. They start from the periphery where the temple is, and they go towards the city center. They arrive to this square, Piazza Unità d'Italia, and these two photographs are taken at 10 minutes distance. This was the first one, and the second is this one. This was the work that was presented at the Venice Biennale, and the idea here was to say that if you don't participate into a feast, the 8th of April of every year, you don't get that things have changed very much, and you don't get how our public spaces are very flexible. And we as designers, we design places that we cannot predict how they will be used. This is the soccer field that is used for the ritual lunch, and these are all the, let's say, the roads of the city that are covered with the people crossing for the feast. That was the work. It was a very large lenticular print, the one that was now acquired by the Victorian Albert Museum, where basically the two images, the empty and the full, were overlapping into the same image. The lenticular print allows you the people to appear and disappear according to how far you are from the work. But this is to say that the celebration is actually the mirror of the fact that there's a lot of Sikh temples all over the Italian flatlands. So they are only in the countryside and never in cities. And the Gurdwaras, the Sikh temple name, are this type of rural villas that inside are transformed to include new rituals. Here you see during the Vaisakhi how they are decorated. And these decorations are actually leaking outside of the sacred spaces into the city, and they of course include places where the mayor can give a speech, decoration on the cars, decoration on the tractors, and finally also helicopters throwing flowers onto the masses. Just to say that these celebrations are totally into the calendars of our cities, plus they become an architecture that was never recorded into the existing buildings. So Italy still looks very much like Italy, but there's a completely different twist here that we need to take into consideration. So for which rituals do we design public spaces is the question that in general I'm posing when I approach projects. First of all, I will show you this project for Manifesta 12 in Palermo, in which I designed the celebration itself. The celebration was titled Tutto, and Tutto means everything. I was asked to work on the multiculturalism of Palermo, which is inherently multicultural because of its history, of the history of Sicily, an history of conquerors, and of course inheriting different cultures that you see especially in food and in architecture. Here there's a very interesting case, which is that the Tamil population coming from Sri Lanka with Hindu origins are worshipping Santa Rosalia, which is a Christian saint. And this includes a series of rituals in which both communities are participating. This is the sanctuary of Santa Rosalia, the day of the pilgrimage, where it becomes filled with believers, and the last part of the pilgrimage is done kneeling, and so you arrive to the sanctuary kneeling. And the city prepares for this event in many different ways, building stages, building lights, these are called luminarie, and of course the mass of people is part of the work. Here you see also how balconies are decorated, both officially and unofficially, officially. And in general, these type of events belong to the Baroque origins, so they are celebrated since the Baroque times, so for many years, and they deal with this idea of collective happiness, which is the Baroque feast, where the fake architectures were anticipating the changes in the city. So this was a building done for the fireworks that then became the square we have nowadays in Palermo. And exactly in the crossroad where these two roads were built to cross the city, from the sea to the mountains and from the east to the west, is where we designed this celebration, where the facades are actually talking about the history of the city. We designed these velvet drapes that were depicting saints, Christian saints, but with very different apparatuses and very different elements. So everything was substituted. Also the color of the skin that became bluish like Hindu saints. And so they were looking a little bit like a sort of transgender, transforming saints into something different. And the feast was there to mix everything together. So these are the images taken for that day, where the celebration basically became a sort of town feast in the end, and a lot of people attended. This is the image of the feast. Going on, the feast, of course, is very ephemeral, so everything fell into the fountains of the square, and everything disappeared. But let's say, again, there's this memory of a feast that, again, was celebrated. And to me, it's very important to note the fact that since Baroque times, feast continues to be celebrated, and we have to think about them as something that continuously is redesigned according to new ideas, and especially they are continuously renovated because the festive machine is designed for a public that is never the same. So a festival starts, but you never know how it ends and what it will happen. But talking about people, we can also talk about the absence of inhabitants. For instance, in this project called Quasi Nessuno, which means barely anyone, in the middle of the rice fields in the Italian provinces. The situation is like this. You have these very big palazzos that were owned by the owners of the land, together with some concrete factories nowadays. The landscape is characterized by these empty fields that are covered in water, some not anymore. And
the rice is produced. The landscape and the climate is very harsh, so it's not really a place where you want to live, but it's a place for production only. And these incredible architectures, which are huge and very articulated, used to be the houses of the owner plus the houses of the workers, which are nowadays completely empty and have no purpose because you don't need anymore so many people to produce rice. You just need a couple of machines, so they have no ideas on how to repurpose these places. And I was asked to work on these territories and to give somehow a new reading of them. So I started thinking about the mondine, which are the rice keepers. They were all women because apparently was more suitable for the women body. This is let's say this is what they say, that usually would clean the rice fields, walking in lines, cleaning basically the entire rice field, 1 meter by meters, and they would chant by walking. And they became very important because they were the ones that protested for the 8 working hours. These people would move from the rest of Italy to the rice fields just for collection, and then would move away. But for months, these places would become cities very crowded with a church, with a school, and they would become a proper village. And then everything would disappear into nothing. But let's keep this idea of the mondine getting the 8 hours work, the 8 working hours as a rule, as our heroes. And also, let's talk about the disappearance of men from these territories. And so we designed these scarecrows, basically, that are there to become, let's say, the protagonists of photographs that then talk about what happened to the land. To the land happened that now you cultivate rice in dry soil. You don't use any more water because water is about to finish. Plus, wind came, and wind was not really a characteristic of this land. So these scarecrows are there actually also as indicators of things that are changing. And as you see, the project was done in a way that this object would stay there for months and then would disappear, eaten by insects and by the sun, and to actually take the wind. And they are dressed in flowers because mondine, these rice keepers, were dressed in flowers, in flowery textiles, because they were wearing the same textiles of the rice bags. And I don't know why they were with flowers. So as you can see, they are there, and they are a sort of mirage of these empty plots, and this is how it ended until they basically disappeared completely into nature. Only the pole remained, and so this is the last recorded photograph of them, and now they are no longer there. The last one is a completely different project, very commercial, but also very much into the line of the other project. It's called The Orbit's Orbit. It's a project done for the Design Week in Shanghai during the art festival called Westbund in Shanghai. I was commissioned to work on this building by Ederwick called The Orbit. It's a very strange building because it works in orbit, and the stairs are going all over the building, up and down. We created a new orbit inside the orbit. That's why the orbit's orbit, trying to generate orbits into the way you would pursue the space around very famous Italian and also foreign icons of design. We completely liberated the designs, so everyone could sit anywhere and everywhere. They could also sleep in beds, and they actually slept in beds, and the space was completely given free, and then every hour there was a performance performing around these circles and orbiting around the design. Also, the central chandelier became the gatherer of everything, which because it was a video chandelier. And so, as you can see, would include all the contents of the show, a very diverse one, until it would become, in the posing moments, this orbit of people orbiting around the orbit by Ederwick. So the overall presentation talks about this idea of thinking about architecture, not starting from the space, but starting from the inhabitant of the space, and how we can look at architecture completely and only through the user, and through a user-oriented type of architecture and event-oriented. So nothing will remain and everything will go back to emptiness. Or let's say the idea is to work on the empty and the full of architecture, and think about a crowd as an architecture more powerful than, let's say, an obelisk itself. Thank you so much.